We're still in step one, understanding the current situation, and we're still talking about process analysis now. So here are a couple of tools that I want you to think about using. The first is called a process flow diagram. Most folks call it a spaghetti diagram, and it gets that name because it looks like a plate of spaghetti most of the time. But what I want you to understand is that the process flow diagram is necessary to get a spatial understanding of what's going on. So as we understand the current situation, the process flow diagram, spaghetti diagram, gives us the spatial layout and how things actually move in the actual space we're talking about. The process map is handy just to help us define the sequence, but a SIPOC is probably more effective in telling us what the inputs and outputs from each step of the process are going to be, along with who is the supplier that's providing those things and who's the customer we're actually serving. So that's what SIPOC means. And I'll show you two different examples of a SIPOC. And then value stream mapping. Value stream mapping is all about time. So when you create a value stream map, what we're really doing is a very sophisticated temporal layout of the process, what happens in terms of time. So we'll spend a lot of time talking about breaking that down in a future module. Oh, we are in this top corner of the C4A3 worksheet. In the one big white box that you see where the pink arrow is, that is for whatever you need to use to analyze the current situation. Remember, this is a very fluid, very cyclic, very nonlinear kind of process. So you're going to be asking all the questions on the left there, and you're going to be capturing whatever notes you need to capture on the C4A3 worksheet. But ultimately, what you're going to have are a lot of different charts, and there's only so much real estate on this worksheet. So don't feel like you have to put everything on a worksheet. The best worksheets I've ever seen have all been handwritten. So as long as you try to digitize something, you're going to make something really, really, really tiny to stick it on here because of the limited real estate. Don't worry about that. What I want you to do instead is download the C4 master presentation file. In that file, I've got placeholders for a lot of these different analytical tools and a lot of other stuff as we go through the entire C4 process. And I want you to use that as the file where you keep everything. So if you make a bunch of charts that say, here's how we're performing, put them in that PowerPoint, and then maybe create some kind of summary chart to put on the C4 worksheet that you can create by hand that communicates very clearly, very instantly, here's what the problem is and why it's a problem. So in this whole world, there are more problem-solving tools than you can shake a stick at. There are full books written about all these things, and there are statistical analyses about all these things, quality manuals published about all these different tools. The hardest job that you have as a leader in an organization that solves problems is helping people decide what's the right tool for this job. Not every tool requires a paired comparison. Not every problem requires a two-sample t-test. Not every problem requires analysis of variance, but you will have some problems that do. I don't expect any of the ones that you choose in this course to require that level of statistical detail. But if you want to add that to your analysis and you think it's going to help make a better decision, then by all means put it in there. So we've got any tool that you want to talk about. Let's just send me a note, post it in the discussion board, send me, inbox me in Carmen or something, and we can talk about any of these things in specific terms. We are going to hit several of these pretty hard in a couple of different modules coming up. So here's an example of a work center level spaghetti diagram. And you can see we've got just rough drawings about the different pieces of equipment in the area and all the arrows going back and forth that show the movement. Somewhere there's got to be a key that aligns with those numbers. So say the first step, operator goes from A to B, then P to C, and each one of those has to be labeled. So by itself, this isn't very good. That supplemental information that kind of explains a few things is going to be much more clear. And of course, our goal here is to reduce the amount of movement So there's less motion if we can manage that. So we might need to rearrange things in this. At a facility level, it might look something like this. And these could be the traffic routes for fork trucks, not just people delivering things. So it depends on the scope of the problem you're looking at, depends on your theme. What level do you want to start at? I'm telling you, if you start at this facility level, it's going to point to a different set of problems than you're going to have at the work center level. Here's one format for a SIPOC. We used to use this for system level gimbal walks. When we take a team out to some workstation, some work area, they would want to go through and record the background information, which includes the vision, mission, and values of the company in general. What are the objectives for this particular gimbal walk? And then who are the suppliers and customers on either side? But the main system problems, the main system elements are the inputs, core processes, and outputs. What's not on this is the lines for each different step in the process. So there's other different formats, and whatever you find that you like, if you've got a format that you like, put it in the discussion board and share it with your classmates. Here's one that people like because it kind of lays everything out. You don't worry about the mission, vision, values, and all that stuff. This is very focused on, let's really figure out what's what. What I found is generally the easiest is to start there in the middle. What are the process steps? And it's just the process steps, A, B, C, D, E, just like you would put on a process map. And then start looking at each one of those process steps and say, okay, where does this product go? And where does this stuff come from that I'm coming in? And then follow it back. Now, and if you do that for each one of the steps, you're going to find that the customer from step one is the supplier for step two. If it's internal customers and internal suppliers. So you'll see that it flows like that, and the outputs for one step of the process often become the inputs for the next. If you want to draw a process map, I'm a big fan of this, and this just helps people kind of visualize things because a lot of people have this visual acuity thing. So put stuff on there. What are your activities? These are the steps of the process, but don't forget to include what happens between those steps of the process and put a timeline on there. And what you really have is the beginnings of a value stream map. A fully detailed, full-blown value stream map is not always necessary for the scope of your problem. It may very well be, but it's not always necessary. You might be fine with a process map, but you still have to understand the whole temporal flow. So we need something that's going to give us the temporal flow and also the spatial flow, so we can get a good, clear picture of everything that goes on with it. Speaking of value stream mapping, here's just a quick example. You can see that it's a very simple process with only 4 steps. We've got a lot of those, I call them angry clouds. They're lightning bursts, star bursts. People call them Kaizen bursts, but at this point, they're telling me problems. They're not telling me Kaizen. And Kaizen, of course, is a version of continuous improvement, as we learned in the Toyota Way. So these tools will just help you understand the situation. Pick one, pick more, pick all of them, whatever's going to help you make the argument that the place you're looking for problems is valid and that the problems you're identifying are in fact real problems. That's the most important thing for you to understand. As a leader, people are going to be going all over the place. You don't want them just piddling away their time. Have them do some detailed analysis and bring you back something that says, okay, here's what I found when I went looking. And maybe they didn't find any problems. Maybe everything's working fine. That's great. You need to know that too. Send them someplace else. Do it again. The more practice they get with this, the better they're going to be. Next up is, where am I? Next up, we're going to talk about saying what you see.